welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show on the road here in Los Angeles, and joined here today by one of my heroes in music, pianist and organist, vocalist, Bobby Pierce. Bobby, it's great to see you.
Pleasure to see you.
It's great to see you, my friend. So much to talk about. I wanted to ask you if you would talk about when you were 5, when you were growing up. What did Sundays? Could you describe the Sundays in the Pierce household?
They started with church, and for me, a rehearsal with a ragtime marching band was playing baritone horn, and I really look forward to it. Sometimes in the evenings, playing in a club that they had, an Elks Club. Well, not at 5. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Mostly, it's a pretty religious family, and an unusual family in that in '29, my parents got a license to take care of what might be said unwanted children. And there'd be as many as 18 children in the house, ranking from maybe 3 weeks old to 22. Each had different problems. And we were mostly the result of mixed races. And they did this until '78. So I take it back. Sunday morning would start out with baby bathing time.
A lot of baths.
Yeah, that's
a lot of
that's
baths.
A lot of diapers. It was a family. It's kind of a family operation. We all folded diapers. We all chipped in. And I love what my parents did with it. They would take the money of profits from one child and put it on another child who needed it. So some kind of way we all got fed. We were all well taken care of. Then later they adopted me, which was a blessing, in my life. That was nice.
When you say adopted, you mean
Legally adopted me.
so they were not your biological
No,
parents?
they were foster parents.
They were fostered. So did you ever know your parents?
I met my mother when I was about 31, 32. And that was interesting.
Yeah, we'll let's not go there just yet.
Yeah, thanks. Terrible thing to say.
No. We don't want to, I mean, there's just, I wanted to, I sort of had this, I'm sort of developing this thing where I see you developed a love of the organ
Yeah.
and your vocalization through the church. Is that? Can you talk about that a little? How did that form?
Not really.
Okay, you go ahead. You tell.
I can distinctly remember playing in a club in Chicago. And Chicago had a way of doing shows. They'd have 3 singers. The band would play some, and they'd form it into 2 shows a night. And that seemed to be the thing around Chicago, most of the clubs. Well, we had this one singer that sang sharp, and it was like, and one night I just said, if he can sing, I can too. Can I sing a song? And they said, do another one. And it was like, do another one.
What kind of was it your own stuff, or were you just singing? What kind of tunes were you singing?
Things from that era, the '60s era, which it was at the time. What you call jazz treatment, what one might call jazz covers of tunes. Beatles did whatever, Beatles, Jimmy Webb, people like that. And there was a lot of beauty in those songs. They were gorgeous. I like the lyrics a lot. Pretty thought-provoking. So, voila, I'm a singer, so to speak.
But yeah, and
It's not that simple.
no. But where did that? Did you? Was it the stuff that you were taking in?
No, actually,
Yeah.
it was a Catholic church.
It was a cat. And what does that mean? I you know.
My parents were Catholic, and I went to a Catholic school, and my capacity there was to play mass every morning. 8:30, I would play the mass before school, the Gregorian chant, things like that. And so the gospel experience kind of eluded me, you know. And when we would finish Catholic mass, I would catch 2 buses and go to my aunt's house to go to church with her because I wanted to hear the gospel. And it just went on for years. I just wanted to hear the gospel. There was something about it that kept drawing me. So I didn't. It may have come from listening, but not participating in it, not playing it, because that was a whole nother set of dues to try to learn to play that. And there was a guy in Chicago that had 11 a room. I mean, an office with 11 rooms, and he was best friends with Art Tatum. They called him Professor Allen. I would go for my lesson, and he would give me 5 or 6 lessons, and he would go from room to room to room. And when he had finished, he would come in and start to deal with me, and sometimes we'd be up in there till wee small hours, trying to help me capture this feeling of gospel. He was best friends with Art Tatum, and he could do everything Art Tatum could do. The difference between him and Art was that he went to the churches. So he was a premier accomplice in Chicago for Aretha Franklin, all types of people. And I could almost swear sometimes I would look at a piano and he'd play it so hard the legs would flap up. He could play. And it took a while because it was so foreign to me, you know, to try to actually do it. It was like starting all over again on a whole nother language. But I've come to love it.
You were playing mass.
No, well.
No, what I'm saying is the transition from playing the Gregorian chant and then trying to get your head around the gospel.
Yeah.
Is there a way to describe? Is there a way to even, like you said, you got to pay your dues? That was a whole other way of.
Mission Impossible. That's kind of like what it was, you know.
When it was that high, all you could do was just keep climbing the mountain, right?
That's it. Still do today, because even that has changed faces.
Can you talk about that?
Well, you had the folks like Thomas Dorsey,
Yes.
who my parents would give me. They would give me transcriptions of his music. Roberta Martin, Thomas Dorsey, people of that day, and I would learn them, and playing them I know was one thing, but really putting that feeling into it was different. Then James Cleveland came along. He revolutionized the whole thing again. Now it's a whole different ballgame. The young folks in New York, they're awesome. You know, I'm trying to think of this particular fellow.
The Professor?
No.
Or there's some contemporary guy.
Yeah, contemporary. He's kind of leading the pack now. Doing things a lot differently, rhythmatically, and seems to have the best of it all wrapped up into his package. I feel embarrassed I can't think of his name.
Well, you don't worry about it, it'll come.
But it's like a whole different world. It's amazing.
It started though with, for you, the bridges were through the support that you got from your parents.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up in a house where everybody was pitching in,
Mhm.
and it was a team,
It was.
and there was no time to really bicker, banter. You know, you had stuff you needed to do,
Yeah.
but they really saw the spirit. They saw your love for and the devotion to music to play, and they
Well,
enhanced that
I had been begging for lessons.
out of straight from the straight. Yeah.
When I would listen to Albert Hammond or Jelly Roll Morton, at 5 I began to try to pick that stuff out and could capture some of it. And my mother said that, my biological mother said that she knew that my birth mother was a concert pianist, so she said, I knew it was in you, and I wanted to bring it out in you. Plus, she saw my love for it. And I seemed to show some promise.
A little bit.
Well, the first half hour was like 12 years. Am I finished yet? No.
No, yeah, right. It was practice
Yeah.
over.
Oh, they really reinforced that. Really reinforced that. Good grades and music. That was their thing. That's what they wanted from me. And I mean, they were adamant about it.
Do you feel? What were your, in reading about you and your path, the amount of mentors in your life is astounding, and I'm wondering. I'm trying to get this understanding of how much was it advocacy on your part and reaching out and communicating with these guys, or that you needed some guidance, or they just saw the God-given ability and they came to you? Because sometimes if you don't speak up, you don't get anything. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
And you have to advocate for yourself. And I'm trying to think about what were your because you could play. What were your advocacy skills like at that time when you were young?
My thing was reaching out to try to be with the best groups around, the best guys I could play with. And I lucked out when I hooked up in a trio called anyway, we
Was
the
it a
saxophonist was
yeah.
something else. It was Rudolph Johnson, and Rudolph was
Holy, not Rudolph Johnson.
yeah.
He was part of the Black Jazz label with
Yes,
Gene
he
Russell.
was.
That's right.
Mhm.
He passed too.
Yeah, I broke my heart. He passed away about 2 years
Talk
ago.
about Rudolph, if you as someone you collaborated with early
I
on.
was in awe of him, and the first few gigs it didn't go very well, and he became a little perturbed about it. Well,
He was a little off.
so I had to tell him, look, Rudolph, I really want to play. I don't know what to do. I don't know what you're doing. It terrifies me, but I really want to play this music. And from then on, he embraced me right up until he passed by just flooding me with knowledge. We would rehearse, we would practice together 5 or 6 hours a day, and then jobs were pretty long at night, and we'd go out and play 5 nights a week on the road. And I just followed him around like a little puppy, and he was always teaching me. A lot of it was latent, because as a matter of fact, it was a blessing, because I wound up teaching 2 universities based on a lot of that knowledge. Capital University in Ohio and Denison University in Ohio. And that solidified it even more. But if what I considered a heavy would come along and ask me to work with them, I would do it. Because I knew I was going to learn. Like Sonny Stitt came along, I remember saying to Gene Shaw, trumpet player, there was a bit of a mentor in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what does he want with me? He said, well, go with him and watch him. Just watch him. Watch how he does things. So I did. It was a matter of watching, listening. And we didn't talk about the music that much. It was a funny thing though. I would play it with him. And I remember one time in Panama, he came to my room and he said, "You're playing that line wrong." And I said, "What the book says?" He said, "I don't care what the book says." So I knew he knew enough about it that he knew what he was talking about. And he had, if I can do this, and that's the way most guys play it. His is slightly different. So I kept watching him each night doing it, and then one night, when we played it, I started playing ahead with him, and I could see him go. And I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but you little blank, you got big ears, I'm going to keep you.
Good. Oh, that's good.
But it puzzled me for about 2 months. What is he talking about? What is he talking about? Every transcription I can find of it, it's like this.
Just going back to Rudolph for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. You had to be what I just love about that story you told is that you were naked. You opened up. You were totally vulnerable. Is in the sense that you said to him, "I want to play, but
Yeah.
I'm terrified.
Right.
I'm scared." It's okay to admit vulnerability. It's okay to admit that if you know that the person's not going to hurt you. In fact, what he saw from you was not only that he knew you had talent, but he wanted to see from you the earnest.
Right.
And when you engaged him fully and admitted that you were coming up short,
Yeah.
you sensed this frustration, but yet you admitted your insecurity, and he embraced that. That to me is love,
It was.
right?
It was.
That's the beauty, and I don't see that in our society right now.
It's
Fleeting. I don't, or it's I get it. Anyway, that is the resonation. That resonates with me right there.
With this apparatus we have, it turns out that 3 of the hardest words in the English language were "I don't know." And
Exactly.
to me, that is the key to knowing. If I can just blatantly admit, I don't know, then if it's meant for me to know, I'll know. You know. But that was an important key to me. You know, if you don't know, ask somebody.
It's kind of like that line on your website. If you ain't who you are, you know. I'm not going to get it right, but it's like the idea that if you ain't who you are, then forget it. Forget about it.
If you ain't who you is who you ain't.
If that's an unknown, or is that a Bobby Pierce line?
No, it's unknown.
It's unknown. Okay, I was going to say.
Where it came from.
But you don't get to know who you are unless you admit that you don't know.
Right. It's spiritually, in spiritual life, that has, those moments of awakening have come to pass through dealing with alcohol and drugs. It's been 28 years now. But I just had to totally know, I don't know how to do this life thing. I have no idea, no concept of how to do this life thing. And everybody else seemed to me to be so objective about their paths and self-assured. And I'm like, well, why? You know, so it's a matter of starting out from scratch. And basically somebody sitting me down and telling me, you don't know anything. And admitting it, I don't know how to live this life. I don't know how to do this. And a lot of the insecurities were cured that way. A lot were. Basically by a program where I work steps, which starts out with, I don't know. And eventually grows to life. It's like having 2 lives in one lifetime. Because I would not want to be what I was before. Not at all. Not at all. It was a difficult life. And not worth it. So much to the point that for a while I just didn't want to live anymore. And I'd say that's the bottom. That's the pit. But now I have hope, I have a lot more hope than I used to, and somewhat more self-assured than I was. But I still, through all of it, look at people around me with these egos, and I'm like, why? Because sometimes I don't see it, but they have it anyway. I can't muster that up. Like, okay, I'm bad. Because with music, you're going to find out from adventure to adventure. If you think you're bad, you're not as bad as you thought you were. Because somebody's going to come around the corner and show you how to do it right. You know what I mean?
Oh.
And it's humbling.
Music doesn't lie.
Hmm?
The music doesn't lie.
No, it doesn't. It tells the truth. It's a moment of truth.
And then it's interesting to see that those guys who are all inflated,
mm-hmm.
when they get a chip, when they get knocked down a little bit, how do they react? Because some people, we were talking about this in the car ride up. It's like we know friends. I have friends that they considered high school their glory years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you talk to them now, and they're still harping on it. They never grew. So
No.
the idea is, if you have this sort of if you have this ego, and it's at an early age, and you develop at that point, the minute you get knocked down, or the minute that you need to grow as a person, that's the challenge. Whether you're going to grow, whether you're going to stagnate.
Yeah.
And I still see people living in the past.
I used to say that I was a musician first and foremost. Today, if you were to ask me, I would tell you I'm a man first, who happens to be a musician. Because I needed a new focal point, self. Not to glorify it, just to understand it.
Oh, absolutely.
Why I do the things I do.
I think
How
you're
to
different.
stop doing some of the things that I'm doing.
I just, your gift, the gift that you have is humanizing life, is the idea of saying, and I think that there are other musicians that fall into this too, but the idea of admitting that you don't know. Whatever, the drug abuse, I'm talking about the music.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really talking about
Yeah, I understand.
cutting your teeth with the music. When you were cutting your teeth, and the idea that you didn't mind being who you were being yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you get the bravado and the ego, to me that's a wall. With people saying that I'm not content with myself, so I have to conflate, and then they try to intimidate as opposed to just
Right.
see. Rudolph Johnson, let's be clear, he could have said, Bobby, you're soft, you're too soft, you're done. He didn't say that.
No, he didn't.
He said, right on, come with me,
Yeah,
and we'll
he
go.
did. He did.
But it took to that, because there was that tension, right? You couldn't. The reason that the concert that wasn't going so well, because you both knew it wasn't clicking so well.
I was trying to say to him, I really want to do this. I just don't know how, and I'm doing the best I can.
I love it, man.
I think
I love
that.
that message, dude.
Yeah, and
I love it.
the way he embraced me is wow. He was 75 when he passed, and we stayed the best of friends right up till he passed. It was devastating.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say that.
Lose a friend.
Right. It was a blessing, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm glad that I'm glad that he was in your life for as long as he was.
Me too.
And I tend to look at things more in a positive vein now.
Mm-hmm.
With all the crap going on around, and the idea of living in the 21st century now when you were 30, and I'm 33 now,
Mm-hmm.
and I say to myself, the only way I'm going to survive is by being positive. So, when I take that story, I say, God, man, where would Bobby be without Rudolph?
Yeah.
And even though it was traumatic when he was gone,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully you came to peace with that,
Oh yeah.
he opened that door for you to be yourself.
He did.
To be yourself.
And not only was he trying to impart that spiritually, he was trying to impart things from the yoga, you know.
The meditation.
Yeah, he was aberrant.
What was he doing in regard to? Can you talk a little bit as best you can?
Well, we went through some of the breathing exercises and various parts of it. He would give me readings to, you know, to read.
Mantras.
Yes. And just basically put something on my mind. You know, just feed it. Feed it. Because for some reason he saw something there, you know, that he saw his work to try to feed. And when you're out on the road, it gets to be like a family. I mean, you're concerned about each person in the band. Are they all right? Are they doing okay in this town? Are they going to show up tonight? Is everything? And it was that way. That was my first on the road band family experience, and a great one. When I left, he said, "You're ready for anybody now."
That's great, man. I mean, I'm getting emotional, man. That's great, man. That's freaking great.
My next job was Eddie Harris, and
Yeah, I mean, you know, and even before that, I wanted to read something off this and have you talk a little bit about it.
okay.
This idea that I mean, there's just so much amazing talent that came from Columbus, and you had Rusty Bryant, and I'm looking here now and I see Rudy Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
but I only know him as Rudolph.
I used to call
So
him.
now I see it there, but I say Paul Kozar or Kuzar,
Yes.
okay, and Don
Oh, Kowser.
Paul Kowser, Don Patterson.
Yes.
These were brothers. These were big brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, they were.
Okay, that family. It takes it takes more than yourself. You had so many people in place that were spiritual guiders as much as musicians.
Right.
And you were talking about that with Sonny as well.
Uh-huh.
Just in Cologne, talk about. I mean, even though you were living through the time, so it might be a little hard to. But when you look back on that, how great. Talk about a couple of the things those guys taught you that allowed you to evolve as a human being.
Paul Kowser was a great mentor. He's one that seemed to have a hold on things, and his was mostly common sense. And people tried to coax him out of Columbus for years. I think Miles tried to coax him out of that, and Miles would come in and sit in with him. But he had 6 boys, and he was committed to that. Fine player. He seemed to like Stan Getz a lot. He had that smoothness about his work.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've observed, oftentimes people are like their music. They're similar to their music. He had a smooth personality, you know. Rusty, to be able to play with him as a teenager was great and a good experience. Don Patterson.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask you because Don had a huge impact on Pat Martino
Yeah,
in Pittsburgh,
me too.
and I said, well, Don was a B3 player, so was Bobby. So was he like? What did he do on the organ? Was it a musical thing? Did they? Because this is the great line here. This is the line that I wanted to point out. It said, "You said, talking about these guys, it took a lot of exasperating time out with me.
Yes, true.
About 10 years. A lot of exasperating time.
Mm-hmm.
Again, being real.
Yeah.
The idea that it wasn't just you weren't just kicking around having a good. It was you knew that they were frustrated, but they were working.
Yeah,
they were working to get you up and to help you.
Right. Don,
Who was Don Patterson?
when I was 8 years old, I did my first little musical recital. I'll never forget it. I played a song called Swing Daffodils. And Don was about 13 or 14. He played Rhapsody in Blue. A lot of people didn't believe me when I told them that. But he sat there and he played Rhapsody in Blue from top to bottom. And he always kind of looked out for me as a little brother. There wasn't a time right up until he passed that we didn't pass each other on the road or stuff. And he would stop and give me a little seminar about the organ, or tell me things about it.
What would he say?
Sometimes he would discuss the functions of it. Sometimes he would discuss how to get a better bass line. Just always something helpful each time. Every time. And I loved him. He was such a humble guy. He really was. With all that power he had with that instrument.
Billy James on drums.
Yeah, Billy was the same way. He would teach me things about the organ, like how to go inside and tune it and preset it to my specifications.
Unbelievable.
So that, and you didn't have time to do that in every town that you went to. But I came away from that with that knowledge. You know, like how to take my own organ and suit it to what I want from it.
How did they? Because I thought they were based out of Pittsburgh. How did you connect with them if you were still in Ohio at that time?
Well, Don would come home from time to time.
His home was there. His home was in Columbus.
I think so. He
Okay.
might have lived in Pittsburgh, or Philly, I think he was located.
Yeah, it was Trudy Pitts was married to Billy James. Is that right?
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Maybe
Yes.
we'll double fact check that. But I thought they were together,
Uh-huh.
and I only know that because Pat played on albums with Don
Mm-hmm.
and with Trudy.
Some awesome albums. That was a guiding light for me and for a lot of people. And from what I understand, Jimmy Smith had a lot of respect for Don. Don had a lot of respect for Jimmy. And when they'd get together out here, they'd spend hours together discussing organ techniques and whatnot. But you couldn't help but respect him. His approach was so unique and crystal clear. And the line of thinking, like, gee, I would have played it like that too.
Well, it was also a way of the definition of genius is being able to break down concepts, technical or not,
Mm-hmm.
in simplified ways for people to understand.
He sure did. He was a master at
And he had no ego doing it.
that. No,
He wasn't walking around like, I know all this.
No, I never saw him act like that. Ever. Billy, they were just like two kids doing their thing. Withstood all those years. And when he called me and said he wanted me to come in the band, I was like, well, but things happen, you know.
Okay, so Don called you to take over for him.
Sonny called me.
Sonny called you to take over for Don.
Said he was thinking about making a change.
Okay, this is powerful right here. Sonny was thinking about making a change.
Yeah. And he said, what kind of tunes do you play? And I said, well, pretty much standards and whatnot.
What year was this?
Oh, God, this was probably 67, 68. It was during the brief war in Jerusalem.
Okay, so it was when the now infamous boundaries were drawn.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. The West Bank.
I was just blown away. I was like, wow. So I was working in a factory and I mentioned it to some guys and they're like, yeah, the Sunday stick called me. Yep. And there was this one guy who was a lieutenant who had just come back from Nam. And he said, you've got to understand these guys. They'll work here all of their lives. They don't like what they're doing because they have to. And some of them, even to the extent that they'll lop off a finger to get a bonus. And when you start talking like that, that's tough for them. He said, I believe you, but he saw I was hurting. He said, well, maybe that's where they're coming from. I said, okay. 3 weeks later, I was playing with Sonny, and some of those same guys came in. I was sitting there playing. You went jogging? I said, no. But
Hold on for a second. Just be clear. He saw you were hurting.
yeah, he did.
What were you
Well,
were?
they laughed at me because I said Sonny still called me.
Oh, okay. So you were kind of bummed that you were down that he didn't believe you.
Well, no, it was the way they went about it. 3 or 4 of them sat there and started chuckling and laughing. Look at this cat talking about
Okay. See, okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
and
right.
then actually they wound up walking in.
Yeah, I was playing that. The music has a lot of moments like that. Years back, I went to see Milt Butler,
Oh, sure.
and I said, could I play? And he said, sure, little man, what do you play? I said, what? He said, well, we're going to play a couple more tunes, and I'm going to open it up to a jam session. So he opens it up to the jam session, I go up and play, and everybody leaves the bandstand, all 9 horn players. And
So it was just you up there.
that was it.
Yeah.
And I went home, and you were talking about Sundays. This is Sundays later on. I'm sitting at the table with tears in my eyes. My mother came in, and my father came in, and I said, what's wrong? I said, I really want to play this music. Oh, you will. Just keep working at it. Keep working at it. So years later, I'm playing with Gene Ammons. We're playing in Brooklyn, and we're playing opposite, it was a group Gary Chandler was with, who was one of the musicians on the stand.
It's a trumpet player.
Mm-hmm. And I said, he asked the lady, do you know Bobby? He said, sure, I know Bobby. He said, man, I remember you from a kid. I remember that time you came in and sat in. I said, yeah, all you guys left the bandstand. He said, yeah, I remember that. You were playing Mr. Lucky and nobody knew that tune. And I figured if I played it, everybody else did it too. Not so.
The magic of life.
Yeah, the
The
only
magic.
Yeah. And I had a good laugh about it that night. But all those years, I was just horrified thinking about that moment. And he said, didn't you notice everybody came back when you started playing the blues? I said, no, I was just kind of stuck on that moment. That hurt. But
It's a lesson in letting go a little bit.
yeah.
Letting go. Because there are times in my life where I walk out and I think that I might have fucked up, screwed up.
Yeah.
Yet I had a profound impact on somebody or people, but they didn't say it.
No.
At that time, like you said, it was, what was the word you used? It was lament? Not lament. When you were talking about the idea of you didn't know at the time. It'll come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this idea that you're not aware, or it's all about interpretation.
Right.
You interpret something, but then years later, you find out that it was.
You want to break for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Because that's going to go off for a minute.